everybody. Hope you're keeping well and enjoying this little extra time you have at home with your family and everybody. I hope you're not too fed up, but remember, if you've got a good book, it's quite hard to be bored. So keep up with the reading and enjoy it as much as you possibly can. I'm here at the moment with my best friend Rusty. Say hello. This is Rusty, and he's absolutely loving having me at home at the moment. And he loves to lay with me and snuggle up while I'm reading, whether I read quietly to myself or aloud to him. He just loves the fact that he's here with me. So maybe if you have a pet at home, you could do the same, because they love the company. But anyway, for now, I'm going to share a story with you. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to read Horrid Henry Meets the Queen. I'm going to do it into 2 parts. So here goes. Hope you enjoy it. Horrid Henry Meets the Queen. Part 1. You're looking forward to it, aren't you? Let's start, shall we? Okay. Horrid Henry Meets the Queen. Chapter 1. Perfect Peter bowed to himself in the mirror. "Your Majesty," he said, pretending to present a bouquet of flowers. "Welcome to our school, Your Majesty. My name is Peter, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty. Goodbye, Your Majesty." Slowly, Perfect Peter retreated backwards, bowing and smiling. "Oh, shut up," said Horrid Henry as he glared at Peter. If Peter said, "Your Majesty," one more time, Horrid Henry didn't know what he would do, but it would be horrible. The Queen was coming to Henry's school. The real live Queen. The real live Queen with her dogs and her jewels and her crowns and her castles and her beefeaters and her knights and horses and ladies in waiting. She was coming to see the Tudor wall that they'd built. Yet for some reason, Horrid Henry had not been asked to give the Queen a bouquet. Instead, the head, Mrs. Oddbod, had chosen Peter. Peter! Why, stupid, smelly, old, ugly told Peter, it wasn't fair. Just because Peter had more stars than anyone in the Good as Gold book, was that any reason to choose him? Henry should have been chosen. He would do a much better job than Peter. And besides, he wanted to ask the Queen how many TVs she had. And now he'd never get the chance. "Your Majesty," said Peter, bowing. "Your Majesty," said Henry, curtsying. Perfect Peter ignored him. He'd been ignoring Henry quite a lot, ever since he'd been chosen to meet the Queen. Come to think of it, everyone had been ignoring Henry. "Oh, isn't it thrilling?" said Mum for the 1,000,000th time. "Oh, isn't it fantastic?" said Dad for the 1,000,000th time. "No!" said Henry. "Who'd want to hand some rotten flowers to a stupid Queen anyway? Not Horrid Henry. And he didn't want to have his picture in the paper, or everyone making a fuss of him." "Bow, bouquet, answer her questions and walk away," muttered Perfect Peter, but then he paused. "Oh, or is it bouquet then bow?" Horrid Henry had had just about enough of Peter showing off. "You're doing it all wrong," said Henry. "No, I'm not," said Peter. "Yes, you are," said Henry. You're supposed to hold the bouquet up to her nose so she can have a sniff before you give it to her. Perfect Peter paused. No, I'm not. Horrid Henry shook his head sadly. I think we'd better have a practice, he said. Pretend I'm the Queen. He picked up Peter's shiny silver crown covered in fool's jewels and he put it on his head. That's right, Rusty. Perfect Peter beamed. He'd been begging Henry to practice with him all morning. Ask me a question that the Queen would ask then, said Peter. Henry considered. Why are you so smelly, little boy? Said the Queen, holding her nose. The Queen wouldn't ask that, gasped Perfect Peter. Yes, she would, said Henry. Wouldn't. Would. And I'm not smelly. Horrid Henry waved his hand in front of his face. Pooh, said the Queen. Take this smelly boy to the tower. Stop it, Henry, said Peter. Ask me a real question. Like my name, or what year is it? What class are you in? Why are you so ugly? Asked the Queen. Wailed Peter. Henry called me ugly and smelly. Oh, don't be horrid, Henry. Do you want to practice with me or don't you? Hissed Henry. Okay, practice, said Peter. Well, go on then, said Henry. Perfect Peter walked up to Henry and Wrong, said Henry. You don't bow to the Queen. You can't see. Curtsy, said Peter. Mrs. Oddbod hadn't mentioned anything about curtsying. But I'm a boy. The law's changed, said Henry. Everyone curtsies now. Peter hesitated. Are you sure? Asked Peter. Yes, said Henry. And when you meet the Queen, you must put your thumb on your nose and wiggle your fingers. Like this. And Henry cocked a snook. Perfect Peter gasped. But, that's rude. Mrs. Oddbod hadn't mentioned anything about thumbs and noses. It's not rude to the Queen, said horrid Henry. You can't just say hi to the Queen like she's just a person. She's the Queen. There are special rules, and if you get it wrong, she'll chop off your head. Chop off his head? Mrs. Oddbod hadn't said anything about chopping off heads. That's not true, said Peter. Yes, it is, said Henry. No, it isn't. Horrid Henry sighed. If you get it wrong, you'll end up in the tower, he said. It's high treason to greet the Queen in the wrong way. Everybody knows that. Perfect Peter paused. Mrs. Oddbod hadn't said anything about being locked up in the tower. I don't believe you, Henry, said Peter. Henry shrugged. Okay, don't blame me when you get your head chopped off. Come to think of it, thought Peter, there was a lot of head chopping when people met kings and queens, but surely that was in the old days. Mum! Screamed Peter. Mum ran into the room. said I had to courtesy to the Queen, wailed Peter, and that I'd get my head chopped up if I got it wrong. Mum glared at Henry. How could you be so horrid, Henry? Go to your room. Fine, screeched horrid Henry. I'll practice with you, Peter, said Mum. Bow, bouquet, answer her questions, walk away. End of part 1. If you want to see how he gets on, join me shortly for part 2.